Okay, so it's not just respiratory diseases, it's things like diabetes and heart disease that can hurt you as well. That surprised me. I thought it might go for the respiratory system. Is that because if pneumonia sets in, then it's going to be anything that can potentially
Yeah,
kill you?
yes. I think these people are generally weaker altogether, physiologically speaking. But with high blood pressure, there may be something to do with the receptors that the virus fits into. So in the respiratory tract, there are receptors called ACE2 receptors, and the virus binds into those ACE2 receptors. That's how the virus gets into the cells of the body. And these ACE2 things are to do with blood pressure physiology. So there may be some complicated things going on there that I certainly don't fully understand at the moment. But for example, if someone has heart disease, especially if they have congestive heart disease, the blood's not going through the heart as well as it did. That means there's a backlog of the blood. There can be a backlog of the blood into the lungs, and that can increase the amount of fluid that accumulates in the lungs. That's called
Okay.
pulmonary edema, and that can contribute towards things like pneumonia. So it's whole system physiology, really, whole body physiology. And likewise with diabetes, it depends how well probably the diabetes is controlled. So if the diabetes is poorly controlled, the sugars in the blood will rise. That means the sugars in the tissue fluids also rise. And the white cells, the immunological cells that normally move through the tissue fluid to attack viruses and bacteria, aren't able to migrate as well in sugary environments.
Wow.
So what we're seeing is that all these diseases will increase the risk of not so much the risk of contracting the disease in the first place, but the risk of getting severe or critical disease as a response to the virus, as the body fails to physiologically combat the virus. But no one has yet picked apart whether it is intrinsically these things or whether it's the increasing age. But we do
Okay,
know that the
understood.
two are going together. So at the moment, I think I would have to conclude that comorbidities increase the risk of severe and critical disease, and age increases the risk of severe and critical disease. And someone who is old and has comorbidities, it would be reasonable to assume, has a much greater risk of serious disease and comorbid and critical disease.
Now, I know you said to anybody who's smoking out there to stop smoking. And we're also seeing potentially that obesity is not going to help this as well. And maybe one, A, you could talk about that, but B, I mean, if you actually started controlling your diet, do you think that's would actually give yourself a chance of avoiding this disease? And we know, and for my country in America, I mean, it's a massive problem. You know, you have 40% of the population that's obese. I mean, this could really make a factor in taking a lot of lives.
Yeah, let's take those two in turn. Should we take smoking first?
Yes, please.
So in China, the case fatality rate was significantly higher in men than in women.
Like how much? 70%?
Yeah, probably getting on for twice as many men as women died, roughly. I can't give you an exact figure, but it's
Okay.
kind
I
of
think I saw the numbers you ran recently.
yeah,
It was
it's a
like
significant
70%
difference.
male,
It was I think
30%
in the
female.
UK it was like 1.8 versus 3.4
Okay.
case fatality rate. So it's probably getting on for double the amount of
Wow.
men, roughly. So initially we thought that there might be a lot of problems in China because there's a lot of atmospheric pollution in China. But it's reasonable to assume that will probably affect men and women roughly in a similar way. But in China, men smoke quite a lot. There's quite a lot of male smoking in China. But in Chinese culture, it's considered a bit impolite for women to smoke. So the prevalence of female smoking in China is much less. And also in the Italian situation, part of the problem there might be, I can't give you official figures on this, but anecdotally, certainly when I was in Italy, everyone seemed to be smoking. And I've had emails from quite a few people in Italy saying that smoking is pretty prevalent in Italy. And again, I think it probably is more prevalent in men than women. In my country, historically, smoking has been more common in men than women, although that's probably not the case now. So physiologically, it makes perfect sense because smoking, and I think this applies to cannabis smoke, wood smoke, cigarette smoke, any sort of smoke, the cilia that normally waft up the mucus from the lungs are inhibited by the smoke. So if the cilia aren't as motile, then the mucus is going to accumulate in the lung fields. And that's going to reduce the clearance of the virus, which means the virus has got more time to hang around in the lower respiratory tract, making it more likely the virus is going to infect these susceptible cells in the lower respiratory tract with the ACE2 receptors. So there's no real question in my mind that smoking is a risk factor for all respiratory disease. I mean, you don't have to be anything. Everyone knows that, really. And
right.
specifically for this virus, though, it does seem to be a particular risk factor.